And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first episode. I've done a lot of first episode things, but this is the Mariners Talk, which I'm intending to do something for more Mariners off day things. But let's get right to it. Steve, how are you doing, Mr. Swinging for the Fences?
I'm swinging for the fences this morning. No, I'm doing incredibly well, man. It's a gorgeous day out here in Flint, Michigan, and I'll tell you what, I really wish that Ryan Stanek didn't hang the split yesterday. But you know what? All things considering, man, I'm going to use the off day just like the Mariners, and hopefully we'll regroup against Baltimore. But other than that, man, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
It's been great, but it's been really busy last 2 weeks. I was scrambling between the 3 jobs that I have because hashtag don't quit your day job.
Right.
And that Dennis Rodman video really put a lot of work on myself where I was thinking, man, what do I do after that? And I've noticed that I've been doing some NBA content. Many of the Mariners things I do are like the shorts and maybe a post-game thing and live shows, of course. And I'm thinking I got to do something where I'm informing the fans, especially Mariner fans, about what in the world is going on. And we're going to see how this thing goes, doing some kind of a morning show.
Sure.
But other than that, it's been great, and looking forward to talk about this because my God, we've got a lot to talk about, and most of it ain't going to be pretty. But before we do, let's start with some little bit of possible laughter. So last week, I finally got to go to Everett to watch Lazaro Montes, the second coming of the great Yordan Alvarez. So maybe someday, starting as early as 26. I would hope.
You hope he's going to be Yordan Alvarez, of course.
I would hope so. Worse, he could be 2021 Kelnick, maybe, because he does have that potential too.
Sure. The one thing you want to see is consistency in his at-bats. I know right now he's striking out at a little bit of, too high of a clip. But that being said, when he puts balls in play, the ball rockets off his bat. So, I mean, he had actually had an impressive spell in Modesto. I was very impressed with what he did down in Modesto, and I hope he tears up the Northwest League and gets to Double-A Arkansas by the end of the year. But I'm actually quite jealous of you, man, because you got to see Laz in person. I've been wanting. I see him. I see him on the broadcast because hashtag MLB.TV shows Everett Aqua Sox game. So I have seen him, but in person, that must have been, quite the experience.
It was, and you'll be much more jealous within the next few seconds because I have a couple clips to show my highlights at the Everett Aqua Sox game, and here they are. Recently, I played catch with Mariners minor league star Lazaro Montes. What kind of a throw was that?
Changes unannounced by the Spokane Indians. 1-0 pitch, swinging a high fly ball right field, deep down the line, into the corner. It is gone.
I was the idiot that slipped and fell. Word of advice for fielders trying to catch a fly ball: never take one step in. When in doubt, take one step back.
Yeah. By the way, what was that throw? By the way,
I heavily underestimated. I overestimated how much I could throw, but adrenaline rush. I'm a 32-year-old guy, nervous to throw to some 19, not even 20-year-old kid. That's how to explain it.
It's all about confidence, man. You gotta throw bigger rockets than Elon Musk. It's as simple as that, man. You gotta have confidence when you step back and you throw. You just gotta put one right on the line, man. It's all about confidence, man. You gotta walk in with that, hashtag big dick swagger. That's all it is, man. Confidence.
Chad. That's what I gotta do. But until then. It's good comedy, and your thoughts on the Michael Arroyo home run, which that's what it was, and that was the one time I told my friend not to film it because I was like, who right-handed hitter is going to pull to right field? Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, that was a good swing by Arroyo. I was I haven't seen a lot of Arroyo, but his swing does look incredibly good. So
It really does.
that was nice to see.
Yeah, and that will not be definitely going to Oppo, and that will not be the last time I'm going to Everett. Planning to go again next month because those games are a lot of fun, and that standing area is amazing because the best part of that is you get two options with that ticket. You get the bleachers on the right field, the first base side, or you get to sit or stand in the grass area, and there's a lot of space. Nobody hangs out there, so there's a lot of wiggle room. So you don't have to go, excuse me, I need you to move, please. No, you just at the grass area.
Yeah, when I was in Granite Falls, man, I went to at least 10 Aqua Sox games a year because it certainly beats driving down to Seattle. Of course, you go to the Mariners games as well too, but there's nothing better than an Aqua Sox game, especially if you want to take the family, because tickets are like less than $10 and you get very good seats, and usually the play is fantastic. The Aqua Sox, they do a very good job, man, and
very good small business food accesses too.
Absolutely.
That's also very underrated.
Did you end up going to the Buzzy? Did you end up
going to the Buzzy? I did not have the time because when I was at home, I was spending a stupid hour looking for my secondary camera and a microphone. So I wasted an hour doing that. My friends are like, where are you? I'm like, I'm on my way.
I gotta find the camera.
I can't find the camera. So I end up using my actual phone. So that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, but that also works too, man. That also works. Yeah.
And now let's get into real business, real Mariners stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. But it was June 18th, 2024. Seattle Mariners had just beaten the Cleveland Guardians, kind of barely. They were at 44-31, had a 10-game lead on the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers. And now, here we are on the 1st of July. Mariners are now only 3.5 ahead. The good news is Texas stinks the hole right now at 8 games. Not to downplay them, but now Houston, 42-41, 9-1 in their last 10, 3.5 out, and the Mariners have been 3-7. And it includes losses from the Guardians, where J.P. Crawford got thrown out. Then it was the Miami series, where maybe some people were like, oh, it should be easy series. We'll bounce back. It was just Cleveland. Nope, didn't happen. And the offense pretty much fell asleep with the exception of Ryan Bliss. And then Tyler Locklear got sent down to make room for Ty France, which I had questions even sending down Locklear. And then it was the Tampa series, where that was difficult to watch, and I was almost even content with the sweep just to maybe have some kind of a talk like, hey, we got to fix this. So what are your thoughts on those last 10 games that happened?
Well, I said it last week on my show that I wasn't necessarily concerned with the Cleveland series because, the Guardians are a first place team. And, if you've seen the Mariners versus the Guardians over the course of the last couple of years, exactly how the Guardians are going to play. The Mariners are going to be aggressive. So, losing 2 out of 3 in Cleveland, that wasn't that big of an issue for me, but it was definitely that Miami series. One of the worst teams in baseball has issues with starting pitching. Their bullpen is not good at all. And it doesn't take much to win 2 out of 3 in Miami. That was the series that I was most worried about because, again, if you've been paying attention over the course of the last couple of years, the Mariners have a tendency to play down to certain opponents. And we saw it with the Washington series earlier this year. We saw it last year against the Nationals as well, too. Last year against the Kansas City Royals. This year against the Miami Marlins. They have these series where you shake your head. And then in Tampa as well, too. Tampa is barely a 500 team. And yes, they can be competitive, but also, yes, they have a tendency to give up runs in bunches, and the Mariners weren't able to figure out the Tampa Bay Rays. But, the thing that I don't worry about is the fact that when I think about the Seattle Mariners, are they a great team? No. Are they flawed? Of course they are. But they were able to bank a 10-game lead in this division. They were able to take advantage. That gave them the breathing room to withstand these types of down spills. I think you mentioned Houston is 9-1 their last 10. You knew that was going to happen. I know a lot of people, a lot of Mariner fans were, taking a dump on the Houston Astros earlier in the year, but they were missing a lot of guys. They started the season with a lot of guys on the shelf, and it was going to be a few months until most of their starting rotation was going to be back. You figured that their bullpen would figure it out, and sure enough, they have. And now all of a sudden, Houston's now playing incredibly good baseball. But I don't worry. Like the biggest reason why I don't worry about this is go at even if you want to get deep into the numbers, fair enough, man. I like to do that as well too. But if all you have to do is just go look at basic splits, and you look at the career splits of guys like J.P. Crawford, Julio Rodriguez, Cal Raleigh, you'll see even some of our starting pitching. You'll see that this team is set up to be a second half team. They did it in 2021. They did it in 2022. They did it in 2023 as well too. This team plays better as we get into July, specifically August, and with the exception of last September, in 2021 and 2022, they played exceptionally well in September as well too. So that's, for as bad as guys like Julio has been, I'm not going to be concerned about this until we get to August. And if we haven't seen some sort of turnaround, yeah, maybe you can hit the panic button. But as of right now, I'm fully expecting an offensive turnaround in the month of July, because everything suggests that's when a lot of these guys start getting hot.
Yeah, and good point, because I'm looking at the splits myself, which you instructed all of us to do, so I took you up on that. June is actually statistically his worst month. Julio Rodriguez, career 236, 309 OBP, OPS of 704, which are all in the bottoms with the exception of April and March. Actually, April and March is his worst month, but actually, no. June is actually worse statistically speaking. Yeah. And that's with him hitting more home runs in June. But then when it gets to July, 282, August, 350, and September to October, 290. So those are good points, but hopefully Julio Rodriguez can.
I was gonna say, if you go look at his batted ball splits, right? If you look at his EV, his exit velocity, it seems to turn around in June. Yes, obviously the batting average is low, but put batting average aside, June is that kind of weird springboard month where he starts hitting the ball harder, and the results don't come until July and August. You know what I mean? Like that. Like for whatever he's working out in the first couple months of the season, June seems to be that pivotal month where all of a sudden the exit velocity starts going up, his hard hit rate starts going up, and maybe the batting average isn't there. But when you look at X batting average and WOBA and things like that, they start picking up in June, and then they, all of a sudden he plays himself back in the MVP race in July and August. So,
well, let's hope that is the case. And I think we covered a bit about the 10 game, or not the post 10 game thing, but let's get into the Twin series. And speak of Julio, we were actually agreed to talk about this one. And I think it's actually somewhat of a hot button issue, or at least it was, because before Friday, there was a tweet by a Mariners tweeter, forgot where it was from, but it got a lot of traction to the point that Aaron Goldsmith got the attention. He actually encouraged it too. Fans were being encouraged, despite the terrible stretch, the terrible June of Julio Rodriguez, where his batting average was at most 273, and then it went down to 252. They were encouraging him, or someone was encouraging him, to give the standing ovation on his first at-bat. And I was thinking, what a terrible idea, because now if it was East Coast practice, he would have been booed out of this.
He would have been booed.
He would have been booed, unless you're Philadelphia. They did boo Trey Turner for all this time, and then they said, okay, fine, let's throw him a bone. But no, we should have booed him, because he's the face of the franchise.
Yeah,
he talked a big game in March where he was like, "Oh yeah, 2023 was a terrible year for me. I'm going to do a lot better than that. I'm going for the MVP." Now he didn't say that verbatim, but that's the vibe that he was giving off.
Yeah, that was the attitude, right? He was talking, about getting off to a hot start, and he was going to parlay this into his biggest year. You know, he came in with that swagger, but only Seattle Mariners fans would want to do something like this. Okay, that like only Mariners fans and their soft, you know, their soft, mediocre loving, whatever you want to call it. You know, only Mariners fans would do this, right? Where it's like, well, he's struggling, so let's just show our appreciation and giving. No. You're absolutely right. He is the face of the franchise. He's got probably the biggest contract in baseball, in Mariners history. Granted, all of it's performance based, but you get what I'm saying. Overall, it's the biggest contract in Mariners history. The expectations are that Julio is going to be that MVP at some, you know, at some point in his career. And that being said, you look at what he's not doing. Where's the pull side power? Where are the doubles? Where are the home runs into the bullpen at T-Mobile Park, right? Like I'm not expecting like 1 every 5 at bats, but specifically in this Twin series, there was no sign of pull side power. It almost seemed like he was trying to spray the ball into right field, maybe up the middle. And then you see yesterday is a prime example. You know, the Mariners with 2 outs drew 2 walks. It was what JP Crawford draws a walk, works himself back into a 3-2 count, draws the walk. Josh Rojas draws a walk. And now you have Julio with the potential tying run at second base. And he gets the fastball, but he's late on it. And then he hits a rocket right to first base. And it's like, why aren't you out in front of that pitch? Why not, you know, like, why aren't you trying to hook that down the left field line, potentially scoring 2 or driving it into the gap, or, you know, even better, hit it into the bolt? Like, where is that dude? Where is that dude that literally sits on fastballs and crushes fastballs? That's, you know, that was the biggest issue in the Tampa Bay series, where he's swinging through middle fastballs. Like, you don't give a standing ovation for a dude that can't hit a fastball. You boo the shit out of him and let him know that this is not acceptable. Like, you are that guy. You are that guy. It's unacceptable. And you boo him and you hold him accountable and you let him know from a fan's perspective, we're in first place and you're performing like this. Unacceptable.
Not okay. And it's not okay. And I can relate this to a retail job, Best Buy, when I was at a different location before. I had 2 different types of managers there. I had one that he was a hard butt. He was a really tough guy, but he helped get the job done. He motivated people in the way he could, even though when people hated him, and we were doing pretty well. Next manager comes in. He was awful. Now, granted, he had that Scott Service mentality of like being your best friend, but the thing is, no one respected him. And because he didn't hold that accountability, just like fans are not willing to do that. If I was Julio, I would give the fans no respect. It's like, oh, they're cheering for me because I can play like crap and make money? Why not? Let's do it. Not saying that he would have taken it that way, but some may take it that way.
Well, yeah, because there's no pressure, right? There's no pressure to perform, especially when your fans are giving you standing ovations. I'm sure he would appreciate it to let him know that they got his back. But at the same time, it's like, listen, man, you might take that for granted and just say, and be like, well, there's no pressure to perform, so I'm going to continue to go about my business without any
consequences, repercussions,
or the drive to get better on the, to make yourself a better ball player. It's like the Jose Lopez thing, where he was just happy to be a major leaguer and never worked on his game to get to the next level. It's like, that's why deep down, that's what I wonder about Julio, is like, what is his drive now that he's gotten paid? He's got the contract in his back pocket. What is his motivation? Is like his motivation to be the best version of himself, or is he motivated by championships? What is it? That's what we don't know.
Which is why I was a proponent of booing him. But hey, this crazy thing is, I'm probably more likely to get booed at T-Mobile Park. They'd be like, hey, it's Rooftop Sports on YouTube. Boo. Boo. But Julio, for stinking the hole, he gets a cheer. So I think now at this point, the likelihood of him getting booed is you might as well write a lottery ticket and put all of your life savings on it.
Yeah, and look at Flick of the Switch in the chat section. So he calls it a West Coast participation ovation. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's 100% true, but it's also a very Seattle thing to do.
Seattle thing.
Yeah, for sure. This is a very much a Seattle thing to do. Is to give a round of applause and ovation for a dude that's literally struggling. Yeah,
it gets me. Yeah, I mean, even L.A., West Coast, San Francisco, Oakland, they wouldn't even dare to do that. They would be going out like East Coast fans.
Oh, for sure.
But,
like in LA, if Julio was doing this in LA, Dodger fans would take him to task. Dodger fans expect greatness all the time.
Exactly. And to really back it up on how ineffective this standing ovation was, he went, let's take a look and see what it was, because he went 2 for 14 with no RBIs. The only good thing out of it is he only struck out once. So I guess the ovation was enough for him to not strike out, but the ovation certainly wasn't enough to even cheer. So next time, I'd boo. If I'm at the game, I'm booing. Even if people look at me, I would boo. I'll take that risk.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, on that last road trip, that horrible road trip where they went 3-6, Julio went 3 for 31 on that road trip.
Oh, and we're giving him a standing ovation for that.
Yeah, 3 for 31, no RBIs, no extra base hits, 1 run scored, 2 walks, 9 Ks. That's what he did.
Woo! Well, before we get too much into the Julio, because I feel like we are at this point, because now we're into the 20-minute mark, but let's talk about that Twins series where it really felt as if most of those runs that were produced by the Mariners came by accident or just the most stupid way possible, like included wild throws by the Twins, a little Cal Raleigh dribbler, and a Polanco accident Colton Wong type hitting.
Well, I'll say this, man. I was actually quite impressed with Polanco's long single yesterday because he got the green light, which shows a little confidence in Scott Service that you would be willing to give a guy a green light on 3-0. Whatever has been happening with Polanco this year, like, do I think that he is on the same level of Tommy La Stella and Colton Wong? No, I think he's a lot better. I think for whatever reason, he just didn't get off to a good start. And I think that kind of ballooned a little bit. He gets hurt, goes out, whatever. But that being said, Polanco is also, when you look at his splits, he's also looks like he kind of, gets hot in July and August as well, too. And I would probably assume he's a 10-year vet. I think he'll be able to figure it out. But I think those are the type of at-bats that build confidence. You get the green light from your manager, which shows he's got confidence you to make that swing and not only make contact but drive the ball, and he certainly did. So I was a big fan of that, and those little wins have a tendency to turn things around. What I didn't like was the fact that yesterday the Mariners at one point had 14 at-bats with runners in scoring position and could not do a damn thing with it. When you looked at the left on base and you see at one point the Twins only had like 5 and the Mariners had like 15. They left 15 on base, and it's like, the ability just not to be able to make contact. The Ryan Bliss at bat where he swings at 2 fastballs up in the zone with the bases loaded and 1 out was absolutely ridiculous. And I understand that, I think that was a pinch hit for Castillo in that situation. And, Bliss has actually been playing pretty well. And in that situation, do you know what I was thinking in that situation? Drop down a bunt, surprise everybody and drop down a bunt down the first base line. For
Ryan Bliss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the speed. Yeah.
And considering that he hasn't even batted for a week.
Right. You drop one down the first base line, it scores a run, and he's got speed to beat it out at first. So like that would be an excellent opportunity just to do something completely different and catch the defense, standing on their heels. You know what I mean? Like it was, instead of being creative in that situation, they let one get away. Yes, they scored 2 runs in that inning, but still, and then Ryan Stanek, who has been pitching incredibly well, hung a splitter, and that's that was the ball game.
Just got away.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Twins series was difficult, but yeah, but the one thing we brought up earlier was, or talked about before the show, was Twins were also on a hot streak. Not saying that it's an excuse or anything, because they still got to go up against Baltimore, which we will talk about soon. But boy, that offense really's got to turn it around. And we're even seeing concerns with the starting pitching, which we'll also talk about real soon. Yeah, like Castillo, I honestly don't see him as a number one guy. I personally never did. I always thought it should have been a Logan Gilbert, George Kirby spot, and then Bryce Miller has been proving how streaky of a guy he really is.
Yeah, and I think it was the second game of the Twin series that Bryce. I thought he was okay. I mean, he goes 5, gives up 2 on 5, 6 strikeouts, doesn't give up the long ball, which was a vast improvement from his road trip on that East Coast trip where he just was not looking good at all. I thought the Mariners starting pitching this Twin series was vastly better than we saw on that road trip. They only gave up 12 runs as a pitching staff on the whole. They gave up 12 runs in that Minnesota series, and they were in every single game. So I was okay with that. But getting back to Luis Castillo, I'm 100% with you. The biggest reason why I don't think he's an ace is, number one, he's not consistent. So that's the biggest thing. When you're talking aces, think about across the league right now, or even in a historical context with the Seattle Mariners. The one thing that every ace that the Mariners had was they were consistent. Every fifth day they went out there and that you knew that you had a very good shot to win that game because they were going to keep runs under 3 and they were going to at least go 6 or 7 and put themselves in a very, very good position to win a ball game. And Castillo on this road trip, good Lord, man. This last road trip, he pitches 10 and a third in his 2 starts, gave up 9 earned on 13 hits, 6 walks, 8 Ks, and he gave up 3 long balls. And the one thing that bugs me is that, again, when you're talking about aces, they always have that one pitch they can go to get out of a jam. Let's say that they have a couple counts that go full. Maybe they walk a guy, maybe they give up a base hit. But they always have that one pitch in their back pocket that they can go to get out of trouble. Castillo doesn't have that. At times he has that, but in other times it completely eludes him. And for a guy who, when he came over in 2022 in that second half, he was absolutely electric. He gets the contract extension. And then in 2023, we saw streaks of bad starts. He had a good year last year, but there was that point in the middle of the season where it seemed every start he had the beginning and he always put the team behind the 8 ball. And then this year he gets off to a terrible start. And again, he's just, you talked about streaky with Bryce Miller. Same thing with Luis Castillo. Like right now, my ace is probably Logan Gilbert.
He's been playing like one. And speak of Luis Castillo, we're going to go into the next part of it is, well, there was a situation where catcher Mitch Garver, he took a pretty terrible hit, which actually took him out for the rest of the game. And the twist of this was Cal Raleigh was the designated hitter. And because by rule, if you lose your catcher and you have to substitute Cal Raleigh out of the designated hitter spot, your designated hitter turns into a pitcher. And that is Luis Castillo. Now let's play a scenario game. So, and this is based on what actually happened. You have a man on second base. You have absolutely no outs. Luis Castillo's up to the bat. He gets a standing ovation, of course, because a pitcher is up to the bat. We love Lafayette. We gotta that one. We can encourage him and go, yeah, see what you can do, kind of thing. Fine, but okay, but let's do the scenario. What are your options? Your 3 options are: do you just swing at it and take a hack? Do you bunt? Or do you just meditate and just stand there and do nothing? Which one do you choose? Because I'm choosing the bunting option.
Well, for me, it all depends on how many outs and how many runners are on base. Because if it's no out and a runner on first base, I'm dropping bunts. Even if it's a bad bunt, like it's back to the pitcher, depending on the who's at first. Because if you send the runner and then you drop a bunt, you take the double play out of the equation, and Lafayette, Castillo's out at first. Whatever. It's an out, but at least it's a productive out. But that being said, if there's nobody out and nobody on base, and you get something over the heart of the plate, you take hacks. The worst thing you could do in a situation, even with runners on base, is having your manager telling you not to swing because you are there just punting and out. In a game as a game as tight as yesterday was, you cannot afford to punt outs. I just don't care in any situation. So it really is either drop a bunt, which is probably where I'm headed. That's where I'm at. Drop the bunt or swing away. But that being said, it depends on who's on first base. But even, maybe even in a situation with there's nobody on, I'd probably still just have him drop a bunt.
What if the man was on second base? Because that was actually the situation.
Again, drop a bunt.
It would have dropped a bunt, and that's what many people said. But unfortunately, the Seattle media disagreed. And one of the Mariner fan favorites, I guess, or maybe to some not favorites, Shannon Drayer. Now I will show it right now. This is what she tweeted. Yeah, there was no way they would let him swing in this situation. And then one of the tweeters, shout out to him for willing to ask the question, could he not bunt with 3 question marks? It's not like he has never hit, which he actually did in the National League, but granted, that's been 3 years, so that kind of doesn't really matter right now. Don't have him out there swinging, which is okay. I think everyone agreed that not swinging was okay, but this offense can't afford to give away outs, which they did because they weren't even willing to let him bunt. And then Shannon Drayer pretty much didn't even read the tweet, goes, no, hasn't swung a bat in 3 years. Yes, we know that. He knows that. Could easily get hurt. Bit extreme. Can't afford to lose a starting pitcher. Easy call. But the problem I had with that was the guy said bunt, not swing.
Right, and that's the thing is this is a situation of Shannon Drayer just wanting to be right and backing up Scott Service, and this is the problem because she's just an extension of the Mariners PR department, right? Where it's like, when in doubt, just back up whatever the Mariners are doing. And Nate here was 100% right. He wasn't saying swing away, but dropping a bunt. And by the way, if you get hurt dropping a bunt, you are the softest individual that I think I've ever heard of, right? Because there's no way, unless you're getting hit with the pitch, there's no way you're going to be able to get hurt in that situation. The thing about it is, with a runner on second base, again, if you send the runner in motion, now granted, you have to make contact with the ball. Okay. If you send the runner in motion and you drop a bunt, even if it goes right back to the pitcher, at least it's a productive out. There's a difference between doing absolutely nothing and punting an out, which again, Nate is right. I think Nate said something about how this offense can't afford to punt outs. He's absolutely right. He's 100% right here. It says, it's not like he has never hit. Don't have him swinging, but this offense cannot afford to give away outs. He's 100% right with that.
He is. And then Shannon Drayer after that doubled down, which had me very concerned. Not saying I'm hating her for that or saying she should be fired or anything. I don't think anybody should. But this is exactly what she said was, oof. Some of these replies, because basically all of them said, bunt, bunt, bunt. Find the errors of your ways or forever be muted. I just can't. And I had a reply going, stop letting it bother you so much. People are allowed to have opinions of their own.
Yeah, no. And this is, I'm disappointed in Shannon because here's the thing. It's like, you're acting like people haven't been watching baseball for decades. What's funny is I have a specific opinion on certain things. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean my mind can't be swayed. But that being said, watching this game and being involved in this game for 35 years, I kind of understand exactly what I'm looking at. And the thing about it is, it's regardless if he hasn't swung a bat in 3.5 years, he has swung a bat. This is not anything new to him, right? And playing in the National League style before the DH, I'm sure he was asked to bunt quite a bit. You're not asking him to do much. But the one thing you cannot do is punt outs, because the one thing you need in a tight game is runs. Okay? The more outs versus runs you lose ball games, the more runs versus the outs you win ball games. And it's, in that situation, again, if you put the runner in motion and as long as he makes contact, even if he doesn't make contact, he's a right-handed bat. So that means the catcher has to go over the batter to throw to third. and depending on who was on second base at the time.
Let me take a look. I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was Rayleigh, but I'm not exactly sure who it was. But let me. I'll dig it up and
Rayleigh,
while you bring up your points.
And Rayleigh's got 80 plus speed, so it's like he's actually quick. So if you put Rayleigh in motion, and even if he doesn't make contact, the catcher still has to go over the right-handed batter, right? And then who knows if that's going to be a bang play at third, but chances are pretty good that Castillo makes contact. You know what I mean? Foul ball.
It was Luke Rayleigh. It was Luke Rayleigh with a double, and
you got
that's
speed.
why the fans were jacked up because all right, Castillo, let's see what you can do to be the unlikely hero. Not exactly likely, but just put down the dang bunt.
And because I believe that they brought up, did they when what's his ass when Brian Wu went on the 15-day DL, they brought up Cody Bolton, or no, they brought up
Colin Snyder.
Okay, so if you in that situation, if you're talking about punting outs, then you just lift the bat from Castillo in that situation, and you go to your long man for 2 innings. You know what I mean? But that being said, in a tight ball game, you cannot afford just to give away outs. And in that situation, I would probably be more inclined to lift the bat and just have a pinch hitter. In that situation, I understand. I think that was in the 4th, and I think he only went 5.
So they were pretty much preordained to take him out anyway.
Right. So, I mean, in that situation, that's the thing. It's like, if you're asking somebody not to swing the bat, then you might as well lift his bat for somebody on your bench. That's probably
Ryan Bliss, maybe.
Who was Joe Ryan. So if you have a lefty on your bench, then maybe it did. Canzone didn't play yesterday, did he?
No, he did not play, which was actually disappointing.
So then what you could have done, is you pinch it with Dom Canzone, and then after that you put Canzone, you keep Canzone in the ball game playing in a corner outfield spot, and then then you have another full turn of your lineup, which takes another couple innings. So you bring in Colin Snyder for a couple innings. And then in the next go round, then you do the Ryan Bliss thing. But the idea that you're just telling somebody not to be productive at the plate is absolutely 100% ridiculous. And Shannon Drayer knows that too. That's what bugs me. She knows that. She's been around the game for a while now. It's like, to defend it by threatening to block somebody on Twitter for having an opinion as Nate did, which was a very good opinion, that makes it even worse.
Yeah, and this is coming from someone that I get railed all the time, and most of them I would like to say are the ones that would defend Shannon Drayer fine. And sometimes it gets frustrating because there is that feeling where you do want to be right, and you want it to prove this is my way is the right way, but I would not have the energy to just go out of my way, go to that person's account and block him, because 1, it's not a good look on me, and 2, it shows that I'm easily bothered and showing a sign of weakness. I already feel like I'm showing a sign of weakness by just replying to them, and some people have called me out on it, and at least a quarter of them, I did take their feedback of hey, you're good. You're right most of the time, but sometimes you're taking it a bit much. And I
think it's a little different, man. I think it's all about ego. When you're hell bent on being right, then it's all about ego, and it shows a level of narcissism that to me is kind of ugly. And that's the thing. It's I like Shannon too. I've had many discussions with Shannon, and I think she's a great woman. But you have I'll give you a good example. There has been a lot of times where I've been wrong on social media, where I just got something wrong. It happens, man. I'm human. It is what it is. And when somebody corrects it, I'm like, fair enough, man. I stand corrected. I was wrong.
It's happened to me.
And there's nothing wrong with admitting that you're wrong. It happens, and it doesn't make me less or more of an analyst. It just means that I got a fact wrong. Okay, well, now I know. And at the very least, it's going to make me double check my figures before I talk. You know what I mean? If anything, it helps me. It doesn't hurt me.
My thing is, it's okay to be wrong, just as long as you're not Mel Kiper about it. Just don't be a Mel Kiper, and then everything will be okay. Because what he does, he makes wrong takes and then lies about it. He's like, "Oh, I never said anything like that." That's why you had Bill Tobin going, "Who the heck is Mel Kiper?" Which he was not wrong to say.
Didn't Mel Kiper, just I know this is off topic, but didn't Mel Kiper, along with Skip Bayless, say that Tim Tebow is going to be like a slam dunk first round
Skip
like
Bayless did.
Yeah, like I know Mel Kiper has had some very
Mel
wrong.
Kiper said that he would quit his job if Jimmy Clausen was a bus. And that he was the quarterback before Cam Newton for the Panthers.
Yep. From Notre Dame. Yeah. Second round pick. Notre Dame. Yeah.
First round pick.
Hey, by the way, I saw Jimmy Clausen play when UW and Notre Dame had a home and home, and I can't remember the years. It might have been like late 2000. It was in the Steve Sarkisian era. Notre Dame came to
second
Washington.
Round pick.
Yeah, and I thought he was a second round pick. And I saw Jimmy Clausen play live in college. He was a very good college quarterback. I'll say that.
Unfortunately, a lot of Notre Dame's do flame out. Rick Meyer is also a very popular example who the Seahawks really wanted. Brady Quinn, who the Browns traded up to get him. But anyways, we gotta get back into baseball. Sure. And with about 18 minutes left, we got to talk about the offense. Oh my God. The offense is really bad for the Mariners. And if you want to know how bad they really are, they are sitting dead last in the league, worse than Chicago, who are basically openly tanking. They're at 218 versus Chicago's 220. And now let's take a look at their run production. Mariners are at 26th. And the fact that they're even leading the division against Houston up until this point is an absolute freaking miracle. And a lot of concerns are due to Cal Raleigh, although he is one of the best, but he is still struggling. JP is down, struggling. You got Ty France still struggling. Canzone has disappointed. Julio, who talked the big game, we already talked about it. He has massively disappointed. Polanco is disappointed. Basically, your most efficient hitter on the team is Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss, who hasn't even played, and Tyler Locklear, who got sent down, which nobody was happy with, but it was like, what are you going to do with Ty France? But Ty France, since he got called back, he's been miserable too. And it really just validates the point that Mariners have to go out there, make a trade. Like, we can't really improve internally, which Jerry DiPoto wants to do. Like, you can't bank on Cole Young, as great as a prospect he is. You can't bank on him just making it. You can't have him doing a 22 Julio Rodriguez. Now, could it happen? Maybe. But is that something to bank on for your team to get to the World Series or even let alone make the playoffs? Absolutely not. And you said it with Brian Abker again before you even get into that point, but I did like the point where you said sometimes you have to take a risk just because someone is the next Yordan Alvarez or Felnin Celestine. It doesn't mean anything because they could also be the biggest duds in baseball too. So important to make moves.
It's also priorities, man. Are you willing to hold on to certain prospects because they might be something in 2028, 2029, or do you want to see a division title for the first time since 2001? What are your priorities? And by the way, I hate this notion that by trading guys like Laz or Colt Emerson or Young or Montez or Celestine, all of a sudden you've mortgaged your farm system, because that could be farthest from the truth. As a matter of fact, the Mariners draft incredibly well. They also signed very good international free agents. As a matter of fact, they're slated to be like when the international free agent pool opens this year, they're slated to sign two of the best young Latin players. So the Mariners are very good at replenishing their farm system because they've done it twice in the last 4 years already. When they graduated certain guys to the major leagues, they've been able to turn it over in such a very good time. And now a lot of people think that their farm system is the best that they've ever had. Okay, great. The thing about it is okay. Now put that to the side. I want to, as we know, the Mariners are far better at home as they are on the road. Now check this out. The Mariners are hitting 213 at home. This is their batting average, 213 with a 298 OBP. They're slugging 359 with an OPS of 656. 41 home runs, 143 RBI. This is pre-Twin Series, by the way. 437 total bases with an OPS plus of 97. Now on the road, where they're not good at all, I think they're 19 and 25 on the road. They're hitting 224, a 300 OBP, slugging 377, 677 OPS, 51 home runs, 190 RBI, 558 total bases, and an OPS plus of 103. So they're hitting better on the road than they are at home. The reason why the Mariners have been able to do this is because they're incredibly good in one-run games. They've, for whatever reason, there's been multiple games that you can point to where the Mariner offense was dead for 7 innings, and they've been able to erase a 3-run lead in the 8th and the 9th and be able to hold on for a 1-run rid. So they've been able to do that. That's why they were able to bank the 10-game lead, because yes, they've had opportunities where they scored 7 runs and 7+ runs. And there's been nights where their offense looks phenomenal, but there are a lot of times you're in that 3 to 5 run range, and they're able to just to hold off a 1-run game. So there's that. But I want to let fans know that the biggest problem that I have coming into the deadline is that you hear names like Vlad Jr., Bo Bichette, basically
Luis Robert Jr., Pete Alonso.
Pete Alonso, big name, big game hunting, right? And as great as it is, even in the Luis Castillo trade, what did they really give up versus versus what they got back? As far as the prospects, they give up a 4th outfielder in Jake Fraley. But for the most part, to get Luis Castillo, they didn't part with anything that was going to be key to their future, right? Like, I urge fans to realize that the additions are not going to be big names. It's going to be guys like Lamont Wade Jr., who is having a phenomenal year. As a matter of fact, I think his OPS plus is 161 and his WRC plus is 161, right? He is having a phenomenal year. The power might not be there, but what you're getting is very good on-base production, and you're getting an OPS of 881. Guys like Mark Canha in Detroit, who's going to be a free agent after this year, not having the greatest year, but he also raises the ground floor. As a matter of fact, I think he's got an OPS plus of 93, WRC plus of 97, so he's right there at league average. And maybe a guy like Michael Conforto, who, he's got an OPS plus of 720, and I think he's got a OPS of 720, OPS plus of 108, and his WRC plus of 106. Guys that can raise the ground floor. And oh, by the way, again, you're getting back to splits. You're looking at specifically Canha and Conforto, who are second half players historically, right? So, and the biggest thing is they're not going to be expensive. You're going to be able to keep intact your top 5 on your prospect list, and you're going to be able to get those guys at a fairly reduced price, and it just is going to allow you to play matchups even better. As much as I would love to see Pete Alonso or Luis Robert Jr. or Vlad Jr.,
Bo Bichette,
realistically, that's not going to happen, because Toronto is probably going to ask the moon. We already know that the White Sox are basically selling him as an all-star center fielder, which he's not. You're gonna have to pay a premium for that. Now, maybe the Mariners do that, but I would be surprised if they decide to maybe go out and get Lamont Wade and Michael Conforto. And then
what about Randy Arozarena?
Randy Arozarena. Here's the
Jazz Chisholm is another name that rings a bell too.
Thing about Randy.
And while you look that up, I actually,
Randy's not having the greatest year. I think he's only right now I think he's only played in 81 games, 329 at-bats. He's only hitting a $196 with a 307 OBP. His WRC plus is 97, 11 home runs, 35 RBIs, and that kind of suggests he's got a walk rate of 11.6, and it's suggesting that maybe that's turning around a little bit for him. And you know what you're going to get with Randy once you get in the playoff. He's a phenomenal playoff guy. And again, I would be okay with Randy Arozarena. I know the Mariners have had interest in him over the course of the last 3 years. and I believe he's still arbitration eligible. So it would make sense depending on what they're asking. You know what I mean? Because I know they have I know they have an interest in Ty Pete. They have an interest in Dom Canzone as well too.
I'll do that trade. I'll do that trade 50 times if I could.
If
and
you're asking,
while you're
like,
looking that up,
like if it's like a package of like Ty Pete and then like maybe a good, like a good prospect, say somebody like Logan Evans, and then a guy like Dom Canzone, I'm making that trade 10 times out of 10.
I am. And regarding, I just want to go back to that Luis Castillo trade. It actually wasn't the Jake Fraley. That was actually for Eugenio Suarez, but the package was Edwin Arroyo, who hasn't even played this season because he's on a 60-day IL, but he does strike out a lot. So that's the other thing. Andrew Moore, who's that? Levi Stout, I think he's been bounced around several times. And Noevi Marte, who has been suspended. So Mariners actually did pretty well with that trade. They got a net plus on that for now at least. But that's the thing. Like sometimes the risk is worth it. And this risk was well worth it to get Castillo.
Right.
And even when we were losing those two shortstops, we still had Cole Young and Celestine to look forward to anyway. And just like your point that Mariners are still on that international free agency, which seems to be their best part of their offseason.
Sure. You know, my point was that, Marte, as a high prospect as he was, he was never going to crack the Mariners 26 for years. And Levi Strout was pitching depth. And of course, we've seen what Levi Strout has been at this point in his career. He has yet to, I think he cracked Cincinnati's rotation, but he wasn't there for long. That's the thing. It's like, again, you can like prospects all you want. And I like Colt Emerson and I like Laz Montez and I like Felton and Celestine because I can look in the future and see those guys in Seattle, but I'm also grounded in today. And today the Mariners have a very good shot at winning this division and they should pursue it, as much as they can. And oh, by the way, if you're wondering, there's only three guys in the Mariners starting lineup, regular players that have a WRC plus of over 100. Luke Raley, Dylan Moore, and Josh Rojas.
It's very disturbing when you hear those names being the top of your guys. Yeah. And before we get into bullpen and like starters concerns list, we got to get it going. It's not going to be 97 for those fans that are thinking about, including myself, thinking like Derek Lowe, Jason Varitek, Jose Cruz Jr. Mariners didn't even have a contingency plan with that. They didn't have anything to look forward to beyond that. It was like Joel Pinheiro and Gil Mesh after that. But this is different. Like Mariners have dudes in the Latin areas where they're probably watching people at kids at birth and see if they're even picking up a baseball. That's how devoted they are into building the international free agent market for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the thing. It's like the Mariners have figured out a way to build a bullpen. I guess you can call it on the cheap, a lot of DFA guys, but I'll say this. The good news is that Santos is coming back. Word is that he's probably going to start his rehab assignment. And I think that same thing with Gabe Spire. And I think his struggles this year have been a lot to do with the rotator cuff. And Logan Evans has been moved to the bullpen. And I would probably assume you're going to see Logan Evans within the next 4 weeks in the Mariner bullpen. So it's not like they don't, you're absolutely right. They have contingencies. But that being said, though, the problematic issue with Andres Munoz and his velocity, that is an issue to me as well, too. And I would, if I hope that the Mariners, like if you're talking about big game hunting, I hope it's for a closer, a legit lockdown closer, a guy like Yohan Duran, that type of pitcher that Minnesota we just saw.
Mason Miller is another one.
Somebody that for a fact that you can just throw the ball in the ninth inning and you don't have any concerns. And when Munoz is right and he's ready to go, then you have your setup guy.
Yeah, and the other idea I've got, which by the way, Mariners really should be addressing that bullpen heavily because boy, I miss Matt Barash and Gabe Spire, is Eric Swanson, who the Mariners got rid of for Teoscar Hernandez, he is now hanging in the AAA system right now because he hasn't pitched for the Blue Jays since the 27th of May. He had a great season last season, but this season he's been very lackluster, 9.22. But personally, I don't think that has anything to do with Swanson. I think it's just the Blue Jays are just a complete mess anyway. And we all know what the Mariners can do. They find people in the streets of Seattle going, hey, you over there, you're our pitcher. And Swanson is that guy right now. He's just hanging around in the downtowns of Toronto, miserable right now. And I think the Mariners should go around and try to trade for him. And they probably don't have to give up much to get him anyway. Like, they're not going to give up as much as they did last time for him, which was giving up James Paxton. But I think they can give up some very fringe prospect or some underperforming nobody to get him.
Or if Toronto's interested, maybe we can go reliever for reliever. Maybe there's a guy in our bullpen that we just say, hey, listen, he's been struggling. Maybe a guy like I was gonna say like Austin Voth, but I kind of want to keep Austin Voth. But you get what I'm saying. Like one of those fringe mineral relievers, and we just say bad reliever for bad reliever. Maybe you can fix him. Maybe we can fix him. And oh, by the way, in case you were wondering, 2023, Eric Swanson pitched 66 and 2/3 inning. He had an ERA of 2.97 with a 3.51 WHIP, an ERA plus of 1.43, 75 strikeouts to 21 walks, and he only gave up 22 earned runs on 52 hits. The year before, in the 2022 bullpen, I think he had 53 and 2/3. He had a 1.68 ERA and a 1.84 FIP, ERA plus a 2.22, 70 Ks to only 10 walks, 3 home runs, 10 earned runs on 39 hits. So it's the thing about it is like he was that depth piece, that good depth piece that we gave away for Teoscar, but I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to get him back into Seattle's bullpen and right the ship for Swanson.
I would, yeah. Let's see if they can add from. At least that's the least they can do. And the dream trade deadline is getting the bat and getting the closer and Eric Swanson back. Like at one point, I thought maybe we could get Paul Sewald back because the Diamondbacks are struggling. And I asked a friend of mine from Arizona. He said that would not happen because he still believes, or the Diamondbacks still believe, that they could still compete for at least the wild card because they did make the World Series off that spot. But now let's get into the starters, and this is our second to last part of the segment. It's been very concerning. Luis Castillo's underperforming, and Bryce Miller's been very streaky, and Brian Wu is hurt. And I'm not saying that this is the most hot button issue, but it's something to at least pay attention to. Like, some ideas I suggest is make Emerson Hancock your number 5, because there are teams that would kill 100%. To have Emerson Hancock just to be their 3. And for some crappy teams like Chicago, maybe him as a 1, that's a little bit saying much.
That's at least maybe,
but yeah. But maybe have Hancock start at 5, and then Brian Wu should be our middle relief bullpen of the future, because he's got the amazing stuff to still be in this league. He just doesn't have that longevity anymore, and not that he ever did, because he did have red flags when the Mariners did draft him. But I would do something like that. And also, I'm disappointed the Mariners got rid of Dallas Keuchel for basically nothing.
Yeah, for cash considerations. But that being said, Dallas Keuchel was never, and I think they let Levi Strout go to Atlanta as well too. So they got rid of a little bit of their starting pitching depth. But I'll say this, man, outside of the start against the Brewers, and then maybe his start in Minnesota where he gave up 4, outside of that, Emerson Hancock has been phenomenal. And I understand there's injury issues. He had the sore back, but he bounced back on Saturday and had a phenomenal start down in Tacoma. I think he went 5 1/3. And that's the thing. It's like the one thing, like, I love Brian Wu. I think his fastball is the best of any Mariner, of any Mariner starter. And I like his secondary pitches, but this dude literally cannot stay healthy for a string of 5 starts. Like that has yet to happen this year. Specifically for this year, I 100% agree with you. Emerson Hancock, I know a lot of people, take a big shit on Emerson Hancock, but I'll tell you what, outside of one start in Milwaukee, he's been great. He's been exactly what you would like from a number 5 starter. He's going to go 6. He's going to keep opponents 4 runs or less. And he's also going to save your bullpen as well too. Because for a fact that you're not going to have to eat up innings with Emerson Hancock.
Exactly.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like depending on, and I think Brian Wu he has like elbow tendonitis, right? Like that's why he was shut down because of the elbow, right? And that's also something that is troubling to me as well too. Because now you're talking like what potential Tommy John, like worst case scenario.
It said hamstring tightness. Okay, it was a hamstring issue. So I guess it's not his arm, but I stand concerning.
Corrected. But that being said, it's like, don't mess around with Jonathan Diaz. I have no interest in Diaz except for a bullpen role in Seattle. But that being said, you know exactly what you have with Emerson. And I happen to agree with you, right? Where it's like, I would be okay with giving Brian Wu like high leverage middle relief innings. Like if you got a starter that's only going 5, like I would be okay with Wu handling the 6th and the 7th. Short, short inning situations where you keep them healthy.
I mean, that could be the internal upgrade that Jerry DiPoto fantasizes about, or not fantasize, but he talks about is if you want to, the best way to improve this team internally, at least with the bullpen, is just move things around. Put Emerson as your number 5. Put Brian Wu in the middle relief area or long relief, because Mariners don't have any high leverage arms right now. They just don't. Like, this is not 2023. And my God, if this team did have that 2023 bullpen, they would at least easily be maybe even 7 games ahead of Houston with that kind of bullpen that they would have had. But unfortunately, it's 2024, so we can't dwell on that. But there are things that can be salvaged even without spending money, as much as this channel heavily criticizes John Stanton, but they're not spending money right now. But the best thing they can do is try to see what they do have, and that is putting Emerson Hancock as number 5, and then putting...
I got a question to ask you real quick, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, but are you worried about Bryce Miller?
Absolutely. I was worried about him. Like, I even felt when he had his first 3 good starts in 2023, I just felt it was too good to be true, because he was heavily reliant on that fastball, and those hitters were like, oh crap, how do I hit this fastball? But he got figured out, and as much as fastballs have spin these days, they still get eventually figured out. And yes,
right,
absolutely, I'm 100% concerned about Bryce Miller. He has great talent, great upside, but he's heavily reliant on that fastball. He has problems trying to mix them up.
In June, he against the Royals, he got smashed for 7 earned runs, and then of course the start in Miami where he gave up 6 and gave up 2 long balls in that one. I've been looking at Miller the last 2 months, and he developed the split versus lefties. He uses the split as I guess you can call it the out pitch. But I've also noticed that teams are being very aggressive against Bryce Miller early in counts because they're going to get the fastball early in counts. It seems like teams have adjusted to Bryce Miller, and they just understand that the fastball's coming. His start against the Twins was pretty good. But that being said, what concerns me about Bryce Miller, number 1, is going to be the innings log this year as we get deeper into the season. That's number 1. But number 2, postseason. Maybe in a 5-game series, that's not going to be an issue. But in a 7-game series where you're going to have to use Bryce, that's probably going to be an issue to me. How do you feel about the Mariners maybe trading for a starter as well?
It's something that I've been open to, and it depends which one they get, and maybe they won't have to get. I mean, it depends who they can get. I mean, would they go for like another high leverage starter, like one of the big names out there? Because then that means, knowing the Mariners' budgetary issues, if they're going to go for starter, then that's going to divert away from the offense. So I don't think the Mariners necessarily have to go for that number 1 guy. Maybe more of a number 4, number 5, just to fill in that. Actually, that's all they really got to do. They just got to fill up that 4 or 5 spot. And maybe that's where you can put Bryce Miller at number 5, put that new starter at number 4, and then Brian Wu can still in the bullpen, and maybe you can still put Emerson Hancock in the bullpen as well. And
or
just by that,
or you shut down Brian Wu for a month and just let him relax and just let him get healthy. You know what I mean? And just don't rush him back. And yeah, maybe use Emerson in the bullpen. But I'll say this. I'll ask this question, right? Because the names that make sense for the Mariners, because they're going to be available, are guys like Yusei Kikuchi, who used to be a Mariner. He's going to be available. Jack Flaherty in Detroit, going to be available. Or even a guy like Michael Lorenzen down in Texas, he's going to be available as well too. Guys that are not going to be expensive, guys who probably are not going to cost an arm and a leg in the trade market, but guys that can fill that back end of the rotation. Like, would you like Yusei Kikuchi over Emerson Hancock?
Yusei Kikuchi has his issues in the second half. Like, first half, he was an absolute monster with the Mariners, but second half is where he has his issues. But we could use another starter, but maybe that's where Mariners can negotiate if they go for the Bichettes or the Guerreros, which I don't see happening. But if it does happen, like let's say if Blue Jays go on this another string of losing streaks, maybe the Mariners can, if the Blue Jays are going to ask for the arm and the leg for like a Cole Young, Celestine, or let's say Montez, and that could be the worst case scenario. Maybe that's where the Mariners can say, well, if we're going to give you all those guys, then at least give us Kikuchi as a throw-in. Right. While if we're getting Bichette or Guerrero, like let's say if they gave Guerrero, Bichette, and Kikuchi for the guys I've mentioned, I'll do that 10 times out of 10.
Right. It's weird, but Toronto's got some interesting has got some interesting guys on their team. Like if we ended up getting a guy like the guys outside of the obvious. Right. The guys that are outside of the obvious, Bo Bichette, Vlad Jr., but a guy like Danny Jansen, who's a catcher, right, who's got a little thump in it, that's, we have a need at catcher. 100% we have a need at catcher, and down in the AAA, there's nobody that you feel comfortable with. Same thing down in AA. You're not going to bring up Harry Ford right now. But the reality is, getting a guy like Danny Jansen, like if we were able to get a package where we ended up with Danny Jansen, Yusei Kikuchi, or Eric Swanson, like I'd be okay with that, because you get the bullpen piece, you get the extra starting arm, and then you fill a very big need at backup catcher, and a guy who's splitting time with Alejandro Kirk in Toronto, or maybe even a guy like Dalton Varsho.
Maybe that's all of those guys. That's what they could do.
All those guys lift the ground floor.
Let's do that. Like, if they want the best of our prospects, then we ask them for a bat, a starter, and a bullpen. Then we just killed all 3 birds with one stone, or few stones, I guess. But it's something that the Mariners should open up to. And
if you told me that at the end of the deadline we ended up with Lamont Wade Jr., Danny Jansen, Yusei Kikuchi, and Eric Swanson, I'm absolute. That actually is a very good deadline for the Mariners,
and that's something they must do. And before we conclude, because I've got to conclude, I got to head over to work because #don't quit your day job, and that means
quit your day job. Yeah,
we're not going to get into the Baltimore thing too much, with the exception of let's hope they win at least 2 out of 3 on that one. But my bold prediction is this: Mariners will not make a trade. Division lead is lost. Now they're going to be fighting for the wild card, and they'll probably be fringe on that. But my bold prediction is this: Cal Raleigh and George Kirby will snap in frustration. They're going to call out management. They're going to pull the Jeff Nelson, and both of them will be traded sometime in that trade deadline. That is my bold prediction, or at least traded next season.
Say that again. So they're not going to make a trade.
Then Cal Raleigh and George Kirby are going to snap in frustration somewhere on Twitter, or they're just going to be on the side pulling Jeff Nelson's. And then John Stanton will get his feelings hurt and order the trade on both of them.
Well, I go in a different direction. And by the way, Kevin Kirby, who's in the chat room, says, what do you think about starting the younger guys and giving them a chance? If this was 2019, 100%, where they're not expected to make it the playoffs at all, those are the type of years that you give Locklear's and Bliss the starting runs. But in a situation where you're leading the division, and the fact that nobody's hitting right now, the last thing you're going to do is bench your hype. You're not going to bench Polanco or France in favor of Bliss or Locklear. Although I will say that Locklear will be the starting first baseman next season. 100%.
I do expect him to, because he does look a lot more natural. He has better defense. And his swing is much more natural than Ty France, because someone, for some reason, told Ty France to start hitting bombs after his 2022 season.
Yeah.
And his home run numbers have actually fell because of that.
Yeah, I actually think that I think Locklear is going to hit for better power. I think he's going to hit for better gap-to-gap power. And I just think that defensively, I think it's going to be a wash one way or another. I just think he's going to be the better hitter in his short spell this year. I actually thought he performed quite well. But here's my bold prediction before we go. I think they will make a series of trades, because I don't think that Jerry Dipoto and Scott Service have contracts for 2025. I think after last season in the colossal failure, and then of course you had the 54% press conference, I think that was the worst possible outcome that this team had coming off a playoff run. And it only made the expectations for 2024 that much ratcheted up. We saw what they did in the offseason, and I give Dipoto a ton of credit. But that being said, you're leading the division, and you're leading it in a point of the season where they haven't done since 2003. They haven't been in first place this long since then. They have I understand the risk versus reward when it comes to prospects, but if you're in a situation where you're a lame duck GM or a lame duck manager, and you want to extend your stay in Seattle, you have to win, and at least the division, right? So if you win the division and then you get bounced out in the divisional, okay, you won the division. That is progress. That's a step forward progress after the disaster of 2023. So I think they make trades. I don't think it's I don't think it's going to be Pete Alonso, although that does make sense, or Luis Robert. I think it's going to be guys, basically B-level role players that are going to be able to raise the ground floor. Guys like Jansen, Varsho, Lamont Wade, Mark Canha, Michael Conforto, some of those guys, maybe even a few of those guys that are going to add more depth to the major league team, where you can mix and match versus, right-handed, left-handed. And I think that's how that's going to play out. And I actually think the team is going to be a lot better because of it. But if they do nothing, you might as well just fire Jerry Dipoto right now. Because if he does nothing and allows Mitch Haniger to finish out the season, you know what I mean? Or, and allows this to continue, you have a full-scale mutiny on your hands. And there is zero chance Cal Raleigh's going to re-sign long-term. There's zero chance Kirby's going to re-sign long-term. And it's like, you might as well just fucking blow it up and rebuild again. That's what's going to happen if they do nothing.
Exactly. And last question from Kevin Kirby, and you hit the nail right in the head. If Garver is out for a while, do you consider calling up Harry Ford? We have already made it clear that just would not happen, because catchers take much longer to develop than any other position players do. And he's not exactly hitting the lights out in the minors right now.
Yeah. The thing about it is, it's like Harry Ford is still, I would say realistically, like 2 years away from even getting a call up. You know what I mean?
He's batting 254, 373 OBP, and he's not even hitting the bombs that well either.
Like when I look at the immediate call ups that you can do right now would be bringing back Zebby Zavala back up. He's down in Tacoma, and they also have Michael Perez down there as well too. And that's the thing. It's like, yes, there's a huge need at backup catcher, right? So do you want to bring up Zavala, who no pitcher on the Mariners wanted to throw to, or do you want to bring up Michael Perez? None of those guys make sense. So yeah, you would probably have to trade from outside the organization. And that's why I mentioned a guy like Danny Jansen in Toronto, because he's already basically playing a backup role to Alejandro Kirk. They kind of split 50-50, but he hits, and he actually hits well. He's a righty. He can hit a little bit against right-handed pitching, but he crushes left-handed pitching. That makes a lot of sense to fill that void. I know a lot of people were talking about Tom Murphy. I have no idea what Murphy's doing this year. I thought he was hurt again.
Let me take a look and see where Tom Murphy is at before we take off. It looks like he hasn't played for a while either. I think. Oh, he's on a 60-day IL as well.
Yeah.
So there's not really.
It's also, why do you want to get Mariner retreads? You know what I mean? It's like, you want to get better. You know what I mean? You're looking to get better, and you should, like, the idea is to think outside the box to get this team better.
Absolutely. And Kevin Kirby, you've been firing those questions. Shout out to you. This is the last one, and I'm going to cut it at this very moment. Is there anyone you would trade Cole Emerson for? Well, I think we've already answered all of those questions anyway. So those questions were answered throughout the show. We're talking about those big names that you would expect. So we'll just leave it at that.
You know, like Vlad Jr., Bo Bichette, or maybe even
Pete Alonso, Luis Robert Jr.
Yes. Well, not Luis Robert Jr., but those three, yes.
Any of those three. Well, that's going to do it. And Steve, I absolutely appreciate you helping me swing for the fences on my YouTube consistency needs, as it did seem of quite a bit since I've actually provided legitimate current event Mariners updates due to doing other things like Dennis Rodman MVP videos and
for sure. By the way, I like your basketball videos quite a bit. As somebody who was a big NBA guy back in the 80s and 90s into the early 2000s, I had a big appreciation for Dennis Rodman. Hell of a rebounder, and he ran like a gazelle. But thanks for having me on, and I'm sure we'll do this again. And I'm sure I'll have you on my show as well too.
We'll do that for sure. And everyone, thank you very much for even waking up to a show like this. And hopefully that, I'm sure my plan is to do this on Mariners days off, whether I'm alone or not, but preferably with someone. But that does open up possibilities on possibly other people that could be a part of the show. But that's going to do it. And hopefully the Mariners can turn it around with at least a 2 out of 3 against Baltimore.
Oh yeah. By the way, quickly, the next six games at home, 3 versus Baltimore, 3 versus Toronto. How do they do?
I'm going to say 1 of 3 against Toronto, and they'll finally bounce back with a 2 of 3 against. No, 1 of 3 against Baltimore, 2 of 3 against Toronto is my prediction.
So 3-3 on the rest of the homestand. Unfortunately,
yes.
I'm actually going to step on a limb and say they take 2 of 3 from Baltimore, and the second win comes off on a walk-off. They'll come back and tag Baltimore's bullpen. I think they win games 2 and 3, and then they take 2 out of 3 from Toronto. I say they'll be 4-2.
And before I say goodbye, Mariner fans, use my SeatGeek promo code Rooftop Sports for $20 off so we can outnumber the Blue Jay fans. Please use my promo code. I am saving you $20.
Do it
so that Blue Jay fans can stop flooding our freaking stadium. Because if you fans are claim to be that passionate, show up to these ones. And if
you can't beat it, man.
If you guys don't show up, and you see Blue Jays flooding, you have no right to complain. Yeah, sure you do, but you're going to be met with my criticism like, well, why didn't you buy the ticket? So use my promo code, please.
But we're not talking about center field bleacher seats, right? You can get a $60 ticket down the third base line, and now all of a sudden it's going to be $40. Or if you like the lookout landing, I love sitting up in lookout landing. You're talking about $50 tickets. Now all of a sudden they're $30.
So use that.
Use the promo code Rooftop Sports and get off your wallet and get to the ballpark. We cannot have Vancouver outnumbering Seattle for a
unacceptable.
We can't do that. Unacceptable. I love Vancouver, but you know what though? No.
No, we are showing up.
Can't do it. In max.
And if it takes to give Julio Rodriguez a standing ovation, fine. That's the deal. If you guys show up I will allow another stupid standing ovation for the first game.
The only
And you can
acceptable
take it to the bank.
The only acceptable outcome of having more Blue Jay fans than Mariner fans is I hope that Blue Jay fans boo the shit out of Julio Rodriguez. That's the only like he's got to get that lesson through his head. And if it's Blue Jay fans that do it, fair enough.
Fine. But that exactly. That's a deal.
Fine.
But that's gonna fine. But that's gonna do it for the rest of us. And that's you can thank Jerry Maguire for the fine. But thank you once again, and everyone have a good day. And pains me to say it, go Mariners.
Go M's.